Welcome to Pause for the Truth, where you can sit back, relax, and hear an honest dialogue about health, wealth, legal, and social issues. The hosts are Dr. Rogers Kane, family practice physician, and Jocelyn Turner, health education consultant, with co hosts from the Northeast Florida Medical Society and its foundation. Stay tuned for the truth about matters affecting you and your family. We're here to tell you what's really going on and why. Good evening and welcome to Pause for the Truth. I am your co-host Jocelyn Turner. I want to first start out by sharing before I even bring in my co-host by saying that we are definitely sending our thoughts and prayers to those families in Jamaica as well as the other Caribbean islands as they are unfortunately dealing with the hurricane right now. We're praying that everyone is safe, no loss of life, not much destruction. But Dr. Kane, as I was reading a few hours ago, the winds were hitting about to hit at 185 miles per hour. And I thought, when I drive 60 miles, 65 miles an hour. But just imagine going three times that fast. That said to me how, the strength of those winds of the hurricane. So I wanted to start this evening's podcast off with that note. How are you doing this evening, Dr. Kane, before we bring in our guests?
Well, I am doing well. I concur with you. My thoughts and prayers go out to them. I've been to Jamaica, and I've seen the hills. I've been to Kingston, and that's one of the places where the storm is hitting the hardest. And I've been outside, across the island, going over the grill and stuff. And now, the reason I mention all that is because I saw a whole lot of, I'm gonna call it shanty towns, is what they say, however they put it. People that didn't have nothing but wood structures, some tin and stuff placed on it, and with the housing that we have, a much more stable housing, architecture and structure, 175 miles, 185 miles an hour wind is devastating even to us here. So I can only and I only want to imagine what they may be going through. I don't want to experience it myself. I wish they didn't have to, but I for sure feel the utmost compassion for these individuals.
Yeah, and it's an opportunity, Dr. Kane, for us to also tell our folks who live here in Northeast Florida, it's our time to check our environment, look around your home, see what things could potentially be harmful in the event a hurricane happens, because flying objects, debris, is what also does damage and destruction. So anyway, the storm at this point, from my last reading, is not going to threaten Florida, so we don't have to worry about it. However,
Yeah,
we're still in hurricane season, Dr. Kane, until November 30th. So it could happen at any moment, and I think we should be ready. But enough about the weather and hurricanes, because we have two dynamic guests joining us this evening as we talk about preventing bullying and building safe spaces for youth. I was in a meeting today, and they were talking about the things that young people are saying and doing, and why so many young people need therapy. Miss Betty Burney, how are you doing this evening?
I am doing wonderful and glad to be here.
Thank you so much. And Terry Wilson, I met Terry a few months ago, but I must admit that if you've been on our podcast before and the Wilson name sounds familiar, because Julia Henry Wilson is her mother. Julia works with the Urban League. So welcome, Terry. And yes, you have your own identity. I promise I won't keep mentioning your mom. Welcome to the podcast.
Hello, thanks for having me.
Absolutely. So these two guests were selected, if you will, because of their their passion for working with children and families. So I want to start out, Miss Bernie. You know, you're a former educator, and I don't say former because once an educator, always an educator, right?
Mhm.
But just in general, when you hear the word bullying, and Terry, I'm going to ask you as well, when you hear the word bullying, what comes to mind based on your experience?
That's a loaded question because there are two or three things that come to mind when I hear the word bullying. In one instance, when I hear the word bullying, sometimes it is where young people, something is said to them and they don't know how to give a comeback, to whoever said it, and oh my God, the sky is falling, and so they say that that's bullying. On the other hand, it is when young people take what is being said to them to heart. And when they take that to heart, it messes sometimes with their psyche and everything else and causes them to do some things that that can harm them. And I know that we'll probably talk about that later. And then the third instance, when I think of the word bullying now, a lot of it comes through social media, where it is sometimes can just be a cesspool for people saying things, making other kids feel pressured and those kinds of things, which can also lead to thoughts of bullying.
Thank you, thank you. And Terry, what about you? What do you hear when you hear the word bullying? What comes to mind based on your experience?
Based on my experience, it's, aggressive behavior between, young people, that it's hard for them, the interpersonal skills, they don't have them, they're not equipped. Like Bernie says, it's hard for them to have that comeback that they need in order to feel safe.
Yeah, nowadays, sadly, some of those young people grow up to be bullying bullied adults, right? I listen to people, and I don't know why, Miss Bernie, I am envisioning the baseball park, right? And looking at parents or the football field, how parents will start charging at the coaches like, no, you didn't do that, and really it's so important that parents model behavior, Terry, that how can you tell your child don't do something when they see you're doing it and it's just a way of life for them? I know you're a licensed family therapist, so do you ever talk to your parents about things that they could be doing potentially that might be contributed to little Johnny or little Susie being a bully?
Yes, all the time, especially when you have a household and there may be some aggressive behavior and things like that. And the children, they're right there watching. They're not being sent to their room. They're having front row seat to everything that's going on between mom, dad, and anybody else that may come into the home. And even with they're not censoring, parents aren't even censoring what's on TV. So I have to speak with them multiple occasions when, they're telling me, hey, my child is struggling with this or that. And, saying, okay, what are you doing in the home?
Yeah, and parents don't want to be called out like that. I'm sure they don't want to, they'll blame it. The first thing they want to do is blame it. Oh, that's what they see on social media. That's what their friends do. They don't realize it's a combination of things. Miss Bernie, during your years of being an educator, and again, I say once an educator, always, but let's go back to when you were in the school, in the classroom. I'm going to start in the classroom. No, I'm going to go back even further and talk about Kidsville. Wasn't that the name of it?
Yes, yes. Kidsville was my daycare center. Now, interestingly enough, I am not an educator, so to speak, because my degree is in public administration, and my master's is in public administration, and my bachelor's is in political science. But when I opened Kidsville Learning Center, I consider myself a true educator. But I saw aspects of what you're talking about at that early age, and it's a matter of there would be one or two little kids, it could be boys, it could be girls, who for whatever reason, they've seen it, they've learned it, they've whatever, and they practice it on other kids. And it's a matter that I found that we have to work with the kids who are being practiced on to get them to be able to either have that comeback or to understand that just because someone calls you a dog doesn't mean you have to bark, and you don't have to be afraid. And then also working with the bully to say, this is not how we do it. This is not how we treat people. And when the other kids stand up to the quote unquote bully, a lot of things subside.
Yes.
I think it's more of a testing hierarchy. Let me see what I can do. Let me see what I can say. And I saw that from, little kids, 4 and 5 years old.
Are they seeking approval from other kids with that behavior? The bullier, is he or she, because I have to say he or she, seeking approval from, they're not co-conspirators, but just the side, the people standing on the side that they think they may be impressing with their behavior. You guys know more about it, because I mean, when I was growing up, it was sticks and stones, break my bones, yada yada. And if he hit you, pick up a rock and hit him back. But okay, from my old school behavior.
From my vantage point, I'll let Terry, Ms. Wilson answer too. But from my vantage point, some of it was, trying to show that you are the strong person or whatever. But a lot of it to me was just learned behavior from what they had seen at home. But I'll let Ms. Wilson answer too.
Yes, a lot of it is them trying to, have their friends and have their friend groups, and it's mostly the people who they're pushing and egging that stuff on that they maintain those friendships with, and so it's them sometimes trying to fit in with the in crowd, and then they'll turn around and they use these behaviors towards other kids.
Yeah, do we have a leader in the group sometimes that kind of what's the word? That individual is the one that may be a leader to instill that type of behavior or pull out that type of behavior with other kids within that group?
In some instance, yes, you do have a leader, and others want to be accepted, and so they're the persons that kind of help keep it going, to help with that person and the personality that they're trying to portray.
Yeah, we are involved in a program. I'm sorry, Ms. Byrne. I just want to mention this because I won't remember if I don't say it now. I work at the Partnership for Child Health, and one of the programs that we offer in the community is for young people. It's called Preventing Long-Term Anger and Aggression in Youth, PLAAY. And we had some young people that went through the training, and one of the instructors told me that one of the students came back. It was boys and girls went through it, and there were a group of friends together, and they were at school or wherever they were, where kids were congregating, and a situation was about to happen. And she called the boys out. Didn't we just go through that play training? What are you doing? They taught us how we are supposed to respond in situations like this. So I think, and Ms. Bernie, that's one thing I like about you, how although you retired or you did your thing as far as your career was concerned, but you couldn't go and sit on an island in Tahiti or somewhere. You had to come and still save the people children. And you started the I'm a Star Foundation. So talk about why you started that and how has it evolved in terms of the young people of today than the young ones of yesteryear? Are they really different because of social media, or still different kids, same situations?
I think social media plays a huge part in the way that children are developing right now. Let me just tell you, I wanted to share something with you, because for I'm a Star, one of the major facets that we're focused on now is mental health, youth mental health, because it is real. And we even have an app now called the Empower Me app, so that young people can use that app to help with some specific things. But the young lady who really pushed us to start with bullying, to talk about bullying and mental health, was a young lady who started with us when she was in 6th grade. She was very, I don't think the word is angry, but she was semi-suicidal. And what happened was her mom died at when the kid was very young. The kids in the school bullied relentlessly this young lady and her brother because their mother passed away, which I thought I had never heard of anything like that. And then I spoke with one of the people who worked for me, and she said that years ago when her mom died and she was young, the same kind of thing. But it was to the point where this kid felt that she couldn't take it any longer because the kids were saying to her, "Oh, you don't have a mother. You need to be dead just like your mom. Why don't you die
Whoa.
like your mom?" And she considered suicide. But the good thing is, once she was able to verbalize what was going on with her, and she started this mental health, started us on this mental health piece. That same young lady was able to speak at the White House when we went maybe 1 year ago, 2 years ago, on youth mental health, because that piece was her cure. That piece was building up her resiliency, that piece. But there's so many little things that we say, oh, that's nothing. But to a kid, that's everything.
Wow, that's powerful. And again, kudos to you and the work that you've been doing with those young people. And how do any of our viewers who are listening, how do they get that app? Is it available to the public, or is it just?
It's available to the public. I'm very proud. The kids worked on it. In fact, they're working now on a component that a game that they call Bully Run. And I don't know if Dr. Kane or someone said it, but they were working on it and they showed it to me, and I said, stop it, because now you're letting the person who's been bullied become a bully. So they had to go back and redirect some of that stuff. But it's in the Apple Store and it's in the Google Play Store, and it's called Empower Me app. I'm a Star Foundation. And we're working on some other components that we hope will be all finished by December. But the app itself right now is in the Google and Apple Play stores.
Ms. Turner, let me make this statement before I get too far gone, since I don't suffer quite the same memory loss you do, but okay. Miss Bernie saved a lot of parents. She hadn't just been saving a lot of kids. She saved a lot of parents by doing what she does for these kids in I'm a Star program. I am so grateful that she's out there. She's taking away a potential, and I'm not categorizing people, but when people get frustrated and can't find income, they can't get a job, they can't do this, it may turn them into other directions in terms of their behavior. So I'm a Star has really rescued a lot of parents, keeping them from going down there and bailing their kids out and so on and so on. So I just want to make sure I gave kudos to her for her and the organization and what they do.
Thank you. We try. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Kane. And Terry, I want to ask you, what emotional or psychological factors often contribute to a child becoming a bully or being targeted by one?
Well, we have to think about different things. Those who, when they come in, depending on their affect and things like that, it can make them very easily become a target. When you look at how they dress, which is one of the reasons why many years ago they changed things to say, okay, let's all have the kids look the same. So that way they can be less of a target, based on wearing uniforms and things like that. But you have to think about the emotional impact that it has with them being depressed. They start to isolate themselves from their peers. They lose interest in, wanting to go to school and things of that nature when it comes to the bully. And right now, it's very prevalent being anxious. When you hear a lot of children say, I'm anxious and I'm worried. And it's all stemming from this problem that we have with the bullies in the school and on the playground. And like you say, even these adults, these kids that grow up who haven't been able to find the right outlet, it continues on.
How can parents determine or see whether or not their child is being bullied? Are there any particular signs of being bullied? I know the usual might be they don't want to go to school, but that's not always the case.
Sometimes saying that they don't feel good, and when you know that it's really no reason for them not to feel that way, and they're saying, giving you reasons as to not wanting to participate, loss of appetite, And then the fear of riding even the school bus. They want to be taken to school, things like
Wow. And it's, it's, I just can't imagine a child, a young person that was very active and just even, I can't fathom the story that Miss Bernie said, that just because some children, their parent died, that young people took that as an opportunity to bully them, and then to go so far, Miss Bernie, to say, why don't you die like your mother? They had no idea what the cause of death for their mother. But that's why it's so important with organizations like yourself that work with young people and teach them how to be, I'm not going to say better, but more responsible human beings, right? And getting involved in the community. And am I my brother's keeper? Yes, you are.
And we have to also stress and press the school system or wherever it's happening, the church, wherever, those adults, where if a kid comes to you and says something, you can't just dismiss it. You need to address the child who is doing it and the child who is having it done to them. Find ways to make sure that one who has been done to them, to tell them how resilient they are and that they need to, they can bounce back. And the one who's doing it, get to their parents, let them know this is completely unacceptable. Because some kids will say, I told my teacher, or I tried to tell this one, or I tried to tell that one, and nothing happens.
Tell me, kids on the spectrum, I guess all this is a medical approach to it, but kids on the spectrum, do they tend to see, or I don't know if you guys are involved in that or not, do they tend to see more bullying when they're at school? Because some of the kids on the spectrum may not be fully disabled to the extent of they can't communicate. Some of them are very smart, as both you guys know, very smart, very delightful kids, but they may have a little bit of a social concerns or issues. Are you seeing much of that? Are we paying any attention to that? Because I know quite a few kids on the spectrum. I have taken care of quite a few, and that just kind of worries me that they are would they be teased or bullied more than other kids, or exactly? You guys tell me what you know about it. I'm not that familiar with it.
Yes, that can happen. And it depends on where the child actually falls on the spectrum, because you have high functioning children that are autistic. So it depends on what their behavior is as to what makes them a target or not.
Yeah, if you're just tuning in, we're talking about bullying prevention. If you didn't know, it's Bullying Prevention Awareness Month. And, I think about those young people. I think about the gentleman in the meeting earlier today that said, in dealing with young people who need therapy, that they're hearing so many things come out of the young people's mouths, or the experiences that they're having. And, thinking back, we're adults. We could not even imagine being exposed to those things at any point in our lives. But nowadays, so young people are just so, when we think about those adverse childhood experiences, the things that they are experiencing now that will carry them on. Miss Bernie made, for our listeners, if you're just tuning in, Miss Bernie mentioned the Amistar Foundation and an Empower Me app, because when we talk about bullying, we know that some young people take it too far or are so influenced by being bullied that unfortunately they take their life. And so we also want to make sure that you are aware, to our audience, of the 988 number. It is the National Suicide Line. And we want to make sure that young people, or people in general, are aware of that. And also, if you as adults don't know how to recognize when someone is having mental health issues, consider taking mental health first aid. Mental health first aid is available in the community for adults. Mental health first aid is also available for you. And I'm going to give a plug. My colleague, she does mental health. Her name is Jill Hill, Jill H at pchjax.org. And she will offer some mental health first aid training if anyone is interested in having it. And a lot of agencies here in Northeast Florida offers mental health first aid training. Another training, Ms. Bernie, that we're offering in Terry, we're offering TBRI, trust-based relational intervention. And I'm so happy to hear that so many people are recognizing I need to know more about it, because you don't want somebody to go through years of being bullied and all of a sudden then they're now taking their experiences on into adulthood. If you have any questions or any experiences about bullying, put a comment in our chat. Tell us about your experience, or tell us about what you've done. And I'm talking to our listening audience. Tell us about what you've done to deal with bullying in your community. Dr. Kane, you had something burning to say.
Well, I'm looking at one of the contributors that did send in something that stated that they they see more bullying students on the spectrum of the students on the spectrum in the last 2 to 3 years than they have in the overall last 10 years.
Wow.
Can you either one of you guys relate to that?
There's something burning in me that I want to say.
Go ahead.
And that is, one of the biggest elephants in the room right now when we talk about young people and the bullying and saying things, because the bullying is saying some things, and saying hurtful things and all this stuff. Have we looked at the political climate right now to see? All you have to do is turn on the television. You hear people being called ugly, vile names. All of that. The kids hear it. And at some point, does that become commonplace? That it's okay to talk about a kid on the spectrum and say whatever it is that you want to say about them, because adults are doing it as plain as day. And so I think when we're calling out the kids, we got to also be aware and be mindful and let our kids know that just because you see that foolishness on television, that is not how you speak to or speak about other people.
I will do it as Ms. Turner knows. I call it even closer than you do, and that is, if they're looking at our president acting all crazy and stupid, with what they say, what kind of role model is that? President was supposed to be in the past that they have been role models in good behavior, regardless of what they did behind closed doors. But in public, they were portrayed as role models for good behavior. But the ones these days, and the media is part to blame with that too, because they sensationalize that crazy stuff that we see coming out of DC by just airing it all the time. And so when these kids see so much of it, they think that's good behavior. I mean, I can be president calling people names, calling people out of their names. That's not what we used to think before. We had our kids making sure they understood that if you do certain things, it eliminated you from being able to have certain achievement in life, no less the presidency. Just being a doctor, lawyer, Indian chief, a nurse, whatever. Those things came back to bite you if you had certain kind of behavior, and that was expressed by at least my parents, and I think most of us on this podcast, all of us on this podcast, by their parents as well.
Yeah, that's why I'm happy to say that Ms. Bernie and I are involved in an initiative, Dr. King. So we're encouraging folks to unplug from screens and get more green time. So more green and less screen is the campaign. Thankfully, here in Jacksonville, we're involved with Project One Health Jacksonville, where we're encouraging families to get out with their young people and explore green spaces instead of spending so much time allowing your kids to spend time on screens. Because I remember back in the day, all of us have known this to happen even in our own families, where people use the the TV or the tablet as a babysitter, right? When parents came home, it gave mom a chance to cook dinner, do laundry. It wasn't no fault of her own. It was just the easy way out for the parent to say, go and watch TV while I cook, or get on that tablet and play a game or video game while I cook or do laundry or take care of the baby. We're gonna take a moment. Don't go anywhere till our guest.
Let me make this quick statement, Ms. Turner.
We call it our mid-show minute.
It's a really quick statement. I think all of us, except Ms. Wilson, can remember when they called TV the evil eye.
Yeah, no, I've never heard that before.
That's what I said, except Ms. Wilson. They called television the evil eye. So take that for what it's worth.
Welcome to Pause for the Truth's Mid-Show Minute. Today is October 28, 2025. Today, I want to talk to you about bullying. I'm focusing on our kids in the African American community because what they're facing right now feels near epidemic. Not just the old school hallway push or lunch table joke. 24/7 group chats, screenshots, doxing, go live callouts that can wreck a reputation before first period. Back then, 70s, 80s, early 90s, bullying was mostly local. It ended when the bus dropped you off. The circle was your block. Now the internet is the block. The bus never stops. Algorithms amplify drama. The audience is the world. The CDC's Youth Risk Behavior Survey says roughly 1 in 5 high schoolers reports being bullied at school, and about 1 in 6 online. For Black students, reported school bullying often looks a bit lower than white peers. But here's the catch: higher exposure to violence, more fights, more feeling unsafe at school, fastest rising rates of suicide attempts over the last 2 decades. That's a storm. Bullying plus community stress plus social media equals heavier impact. So why does it feel worse today? Bullying went from moments to permanence. Posts don't disappear. It went from private to public. Humiliation is broadcast. It went from local to global, piling on scales fast. And adult behavior online got messier, so kids are copying us. Did we soften as parents, educators, and community? Or are we finally seeing what was always there? Honestly, both. Cameras and apps make the invisible visible. Neighborhoods lost third spaces. Schools lost counselors. Ratios of 400 or 500 to 1 in many districts. Teachers are stretched thin, and zero-tolerance policies punished kids without teaching them how to repair harm. We got louder with discipline and quieter with support. Are kids softer today? I don't buy it. They're more vocal about pain in a world that never turns off. That's not weakness. That's honesty. Resilience isn't built by telling kids to toughen up. It's built by giving them people and places to lean on. Here's how we build safe spaces that work. Start every season, classroom and club, with a not in this space agreement. Clear. Repeated. Enforced. Train bystanders to act. Interrupt. Document. Report. Include. Use restorative circles. Teach skills. Repair harm. Rebuild trust. Put culture at the center. Black student unions. Step teams. Barbershop talks. Faith-based youth nights. Belonging beats bullying. Level up digital literacy. Privacy. Receipts. How to block. Mute. Report. Parents. Set phone contracts. Bedtime charging docks. No anonymous apps. Consequences that teach, not just punish. Push districts for more counselors and mentors. Aim for relationships, not just rules. The question isn't, are kids softer? It's, are we stronger for them? Today, make one call. Send one check-in text. Start one circle. Safe spaces aren't places we find. They're places we build. Together.
Wow, Tyrone does such a great job finding online resources for our mid-show moment. So thank you, Tyrone, for that. Terry, I want to ask you, what is it, or maybe I'll back up with Miss Bernie. Miss Bernie, of all the years you've been working, and I don't know how long ago you started the I'm a Star Foundation, but throughout your years, have you had young people talk about they were being bullied and thanked their involvement with Amistar to help them deal with it?
Thank God, yes. The young lady, for instance, was one, but several kids have come through I'm a Star, and some of the young men who are just, smart kids, but they were being, taunted for not being the aggressive type, et cetera, et cetera. But they have thanked I'm a Star because one of the kids said it best. We say morning, noon, and night, and you know this, Jocelyn, because you've been there with us, that they are smart, talented, and resilient students who are destined to change the world. The more we put that into them, the more they say it, that builds a coat of armor around them that it is going to be hard to break. Because as one of the kids said, Tiffany, she's at Howard now, but she said, that's not just something we say, that's a lifestyle. We've got to start putting into kids a lifestyle of, there are certain things that you have to know who you are. And once you know who you are and you are comfortable in that, it is really hard for somebody to try to break it.
Yeah. So Terry, how can family therapy or counseling support healing for both victims and aggressors?
So one of the things is you have to have the lines of communication open. And that's even before you come to therapy. So that way your children will be able to talk to you and let you know what's going on. So that way you can get them the support that you need. So when you come to family counseling or, and even individual, you're able to talk with the family as a whole and the child that's being bullied to be able to help them get the tools that they need and the support. So teaching them those social skills, being able to help them with problem solving. And then it opens up the doors to see if there's anything that's in the home that is causing the aggressor to take that kind of behavior outside. So that way you can help the parents model better and healthy relationships in front of them.
Is this should the conversation be separate? For example, should you have as a LMFT, would you have a different or separate conversation with the parent and the child? Do you do them together or both?
Both. It depends on the nature of the issue and how it comes to being able to have someone really come in and join your family and help you be able to change those behaviors. So it just depends on what's going on at the time, the presenting issues, and whether or not you work with the family as a whole, which is great. But sometimes everyone don't show up, but you can still help the family.
Can I ask Ms. Wilson a question?
Go ahead. No, go ahead.
Ms. Wilson, what is the youngest age that has come to you for help as far as a kid is concerned?
I've worked with kids as young as 5 and up.
Wow. Wow. That's something. And I'm thinking of folks who, especially in our communities, they don't always seek counseling. And so, Dr. Kane, have you in your practice, I know you primarily see adults, but even with adults, have you referred them to counseling and you had to convince them that they needed it versus them being accepting of it and willing to seek counseling?
All the time. Adults, you guys both, I guess, mentioned it earlier, and that is that these kids emulate, whatever you want to call it, the adult behavior. And so those adults, it might be, I'm probably going to get hit a bad nerve with this one. It might be the chief sister in the church that's the bullier. Because I've been in, you have, the mother being the bullier of the other people in church. So that, yes, I see it with the family. If I do notice it, I am looking at either the mother or the father or both. I look to see whether or not mother and father, both of them are in the household. how will mom treat dad and vice versa? If boys see where, you want to beat up on my mama, then, of course, when they're young boys, they detest it. But sometimes when they get older, they emulate it.
Yeah.
And so try to get a history of how these kids are being raised without turning off the parents so that you don't get a chance to see them again because you're still trying to rescue the kids. At some point, screw the parent if it means I'm going to lose that kid. So I want to make sure I reach out to the kid, and but most of the time, the parents are receptive. Most parents are receptive with trying to help out their children in school and so on and so on. So you got to just look at those parents, as both of our guests have said already. Look.
Yeah, I think about it. Just made me think, Dr. Kane, as you were talking, that people don't understand the difference. And I don't know which one of you want to comment on this between conflict, teasing, and bullying, right? People can tease with you, but it's bullying, right?
Mhm.
And you have to know when it's inappropriate to say things to people. And that is as adults, even. And so, because again, children witness what adults model, right? And so to understand and help me out, how do you differentiate between conflict, teasing, and bullying? And why is that distinction important for parents to even recognize?
I would have to say sometimes it's a challenge when you're trying to teach and show. So when you look at the example that we've mentioned several times about, being in the household and whether or not they're in a household where there's healthy boundaries, and you can see that, okay, the other person doesn't take it as hard. The body language after someone has said something that may be, a little uncomfortable, versus when someone comes straight in and the person is, immediately hurt by whatever is said and there's no repair attempts. And so then the children, they go outside and, they're thinking, oh, I can say this because, this person looks this way because this is what I've seen. But the other person, you don't know what has happened in their life, that it's hard for them to see it as just being a tease or so. So it's not what you're doing, it's also how the other person perceives what you said based on their experiencing.
I've seen it in my exam room when I sometimes have two adults in there, especially when I have the two adults and there may be a child. It might be grandparents taking care of the grandkids. So I'm not letting grandparents off the hook with some of this learned behavior. But I sometimes see them when they talk to each other, they say it in such a way that can be somewhat combative in terms of how they're dealing with each other. And of course, that little 4 or 5 years old who missed school that day and with grandma or granddaddy because they came into the clinic, and if I'm witnessing it in my exam room, I can only imagine what might be going on in the car and at home. And again, it ain't. I'm not picking on grandparents. It ain't just parents. Sometimes I see a lot of it in these grandparents.
Right.
Yeah, and I think about the long-term effects of that. And Terry, how does bullying impact self-esteem and trust in relationships later in life?
It has a humongous impact, and it can be detrimental, just, because it does get to the point where a person's self-esteem is so low that they cannot come back from it. And it impacts how they navigate relationships moving forward. And it also can be to the point where they make it to a time where they just cannot handle from being depressed, being antisocial, separating themselves. And then it can lead to thoughts where they don't no longer want to be here and could go to suicidal thoughts.
Wow. Miss Bernie, I want you to put on your hat from when you were on the school board. So I'm going there.
Okay.
So Brace yourself.
All right.
From a school policy standpoint, and I recognize you're not involved anymore, but just think about it. What approaches do you think are working or not working, and what needs to change?
I think that there needs to be more listening. And when I say listening, I'm talking about listening on the adult side, to really listen to what is going on, to understand where the child is and meet that child where he or she is. That's the bully and the one who's being bullied. And then the third piece is we put out policies and those kinds of things, but in actuality, are we providing some safe spaces for kids to go to? Are we providing some opportunities for kids to share what is happening with them, share their information in a safe space where somebody's not saying, oh, girls, just go sit down somewhere? Or are we listening, seeing what we can do? And it may be that you can say, girl, go sit down, and they're just playing with you. But if it's not, what are we doing? What do we have in place to help those young people? And I think that we need a lot more safe spaces.
I think that school board members also need to, and I'm just throwing on a little additive, and need to do more investigation and consideration of what is going on in the school. Not sitting up on, in that White Palace, making decisions and don't really know what the subject matter of what you're making decisions about. In this case, it's bullying. But
You're so right. You're so right. I remember when I was on the board, I can't remember what year it was, but I did a listening tour on bullying. And at one of them, we were at St. Paul AME Church. The room was packed. Parents of all races, ages, etc. Kids talking about those kinds of things that took place, which let me know that there was, even if we in our minds say, oh, it's not as bad as it is, but what are we doing for all of those parents to come out there? There's something that we need to do as leaders to make sure that some things that we're listening.
Yeah, I think about, and last year we had some candidates for school board on the podcast, and people have to know that when you have choices of people to elect, you really have to have or ask the right questions to make sure you choose the right people to represent your children, right? And so I want to ask this question, Ms. Burney, again, putting your former hat on as a school board member, but how can school districts and administrators create environments that hold students accountable while still being restorative rather than punitive?
I think
good question.
A lot of it comes from because the school board, of course, has to basically do the policies, and then it goes to the superintendent. The superintendent then is directed to make sure that policy is followed and implemented with fidelity. So it's more of the superintendent getting with his or her administrative staff and coming up with some things. But the one piece that we always seem to leave out when we're talking about coming together as a group to brainstorm, etc., we leave out the kids.
Yeah,
they have great advice, great information. So sometimes I think even when they're doing it, they need to, if the school board has a policy, which they do, then the superintendent is then directed to make sure that he or she finds a way to get all the people involved to come up with a solution. And solutions are out there.
And I like what you said about having the young people as a part of it, because that's some of the thing that we're doing and working with you on. And also I have to say this though, how can educators ensure that anti-bullying efforts are culturally responsive and inclusive?
I will let Ms. Terry answer that one.
I mean, definitely one, the educators, they need to make sure they educate themselves on the different policies and being able to share and, having that safe place, being able to talk to the kids. Because what I hear a lot of is the kids don't feel safe talking to the teachers because then they become victimized in the process versus, someone standing up for them and trying to help. So it's definitely them being educated on the different processes that will work well in the schools that they're in, because each school, the communities are different. So you think about all of those things and how that plays a role when children are being bullied and someone feeling safe to be able to talk to a caring adult.
So what tools or coping strategies do you recommend for young people who've been bullied to rebuild their confidence and resilience?
I talk a lot about affirmations, being able to build themselves up, being around positive peers versus negative ones, because that's another thing. I talk about being able to limit the time when it comes to social media. I definitely let them know that, hey, that's entertainment purposes only, because a lot of them, they get lost in that atmosphere and they don't know when to just put the phone down, because they come to me and they say, hey, I'm being bullied and I'm trying to figure out where. So then it's okay, this is cyberbullying. What is it that causes you to not be able to just say, okay, you know what, I can stop it here and put that down, and being able to have those places where they say, okay, these are things that I enjoy. These are things that make me feel good. And that way we can kind of keep them with the mental health portion aspect of it.
I like how you said that. And I think about Miss Bernie. Miss Bernie, I promise I'm getting ready to let you say something because I'm getting ready to gear. That's why organizations like the I'm a Star Foundation is a good place and space for young people to be connected. And there are some other great organizations out there as well, but connecting your young people, as you said, to positive places and spaces. Go ahead, Miss Bernie.
When Ms. Wilson said affirmations, so on our Empower Me app, an affirmation pops up every day. And there are 365 affirmations that the kids did. This one today says, I am healing and strengthening every day. When they get it in their spirit and they see it. But I just want to say one other thing. And Jocelyn, you may not even remember this, but was it 15 years ago? You came and you said to the kids in the Amistar Foundation that their generation might be the generation that would not outlive their parents because they were not eating healthy and they were not getting active, and challenged them to do something. 13 years later, they started with that Let's Move Jacksonville, and they're continuing to do it and building on it. This year, we're going to even do a mental component in that space. But my point is, as someone who was knowledgeable, you came out, you shared that information, it stuck in the kids' psyche, they kept it going, we repeated it, so that now it's become a part of them. Same thing can happen with bullying, I believe.
Yeah, and that was real interesting. Thank you, Miss Bernie, for bringing that up. And I remember that campaign we did, So Fresh, So Clean, where we did the Corner Store Initiative. And Miss Bernie and Terry are right. When you engage young people in conversations, it's almost like you get a bunch of men to create something that you think ladies would like. No, you bring ladies. And Dr. Kane, I think about our Men's Health Initiative when I brought men together and they're like, yeah, Jocelyn, those ideas are good for ladies. But, ask the men if you want the men to be involved or to know what activities or men would want at a men's health event. And so it's the same thing for kids, right? Like, let them be a part of initiative planning. Don't just bring them in, create a program and then wonder why they don't want to show up. It's not interesting to them. And maybe you start the nonprofit, but then when you get ready to start creating activities or coming up with your calendar of activities, bring the young people there and let them be a part of the planning process. Dr. Kane, did you want to say something?
Well, you kind of said it toward the end, and that is one of our listeners that mentioned that the students are the stakeholders at least definitely in this conversation, the students are stakeholders. So how are you going to have a conversation about how to handle something and all the stakeholders, none of them are in the room? All you got is board members whom are not listening to the people that are being affected, i.e. the stakeholders.
Sorry, I had to drink some water. It's unusual when I have a loss of words. I want to ask for you all to think about, for our listeners. We have a variety of listeners. We may have some physicians who are listening, parents or whatever. How can the community come together to deal with bullying prevention and just positive youth development? Anybody other than cloning Amastar Foundation, Ms. Bernie?
Well, I think that's where organizations like yours, and we've talked about it, with Dr. Husband through your organization, having pockets of places where kids and parents can come together and speak, or where kids speak, or where parents speak, or going to, Ms. Wilson and asking her to do something in the community. We got all these parks, open up a park, go to the park one day, one Saturday, or whatever it takes. I know that's something that we're going to start doing, going to different parks, opening up that park, relaxing all of the cell phones, and letting kids and parents talk, and taking a break from all of that other noise that they're hearing.
Excellent idea. His turn. You're mute. You may be mute.
I'm here. No, I'm just saying you're right. Just, some more initiatives, really trying to get the community together, being able to talk. And it's very important that parents are involved, especially when it comes to school, talking to the teachers, being able to say, hey, if someone is saying something, definitely taking it to them, not being afraid that you're going to, upset the situation even further. Because if you don't talk about it, and who's going to know? And then it's going to be repeated. It'll be continued. And it further damages, what you're trying to achieve here.
Ms. Bernie, do you have any upcoming activities that you want to talk about? You mentioned I know it's usually in December. Is that event happening in December?
Let's Move Jacksonville, December 6th, from 11 to 3 at Clutho Park. It's a fun, healthy initiative that really was spurred on by Miss Jocelyn Turner, talking to our kids about being healthy.
And then
yes, and 12 years later, they're still doing it, 13 years later. And we also we host a youth-led mental health conference every year, and that will take place March 29th. And bullying is one aspect of it.
Ms. Wilson, can you, I think someone in Pause for the Truth wants you to discuss being able to talk, having parents talking to their children. It's not an easy thing, and that it is something that requires practice. Can you comment on that?
Yes, it does require practice. When you think about it, and that just starts with you being able, they get in the car, when they come home after school, having that downtime where you talk and ask about their day, ask about what they learned new. Did anything happen? That way it opens up the doors for them to want to be able to communicate with you. Because if they come home and you're always on your phone, or you always engulfed into something, then it will be hard, because you're modeling for them that it's okay to, be able to just go in your room and not face what is happening. And that's where the isolation comes in, and you don't know what your child is really experiencing or going through. So keep the doors open, put down the phone sometime, and be able to, just talk about different things. And that will help your children be more comfortable talking to you about things that are, affecting them on a daily basis.
Very good.
Great answer.
Yeah,
Yes.
that's when you have to, and I'm guilty of it, by the way. I can't say it, have family time and not, and my mom always tells me that you always want to just come and sit in front of the TV, and no, you really have to have that family time where you could talk about and hear about what happened with you today, right?
Mhm.
And put the phone aside, unplug, turn off all those screens and really sit down and talk. Because oftentimes, and we didn't even get into what COVID did for young people,
Jeez.
right? And
Mhm.
because of the social isolation. And
Mhm.
I've heard some people, and you all can share, are you still seeing some side effects, if you will, of what COVID did to young people in your line of work?
Yes, definitely. We wouldn't have never thought that we would have had learning online. You wouldn't have never
Mhm.
thought that you would have went home from the office and was working. And so when you think about how hard it is to communicate and socialize to begin with, depending on your background and things of that nature, COVID just took it to a different level. And so now I see where kids, they don't even want to come from behind the screen and interact. Everything is
Mhm.
on screen now. And it's like, okay, yes, technology is good, but too much technology is what's hurting our children.
Yeah, and that isolation piece, they still, they'll come together as a group, and I have to say, talk to each other,
No.
say hello to each other, because they would rather just sit there and do this and not talk to each other. So that isolation really from COVID really has not gone away. You have to make it go away as the adult.
Yeah,
We had
communication with intention is what we need to have. And you
Mhm.
intend to communicate with your peers, with your family, with your loved ones. So communication with intention is what I would describe.
Mhm.
and I think about our we had a chiropractor on, and he was talking about the young person who was complaining of neck issues, and he looked over, and the kid was on the phone, right? So the things that you're doing today will catch up with your child, unfortunately, when they grow up, because you've allowed them. And he even told us, when we're on the podcast or on the computer, make sure it's up high, and you look up at it and look up at the TV rather than looking down at it like I am now, guilty because I didn't connect my large screen to it. Well, this has been very good conversation. I know we're a little past the hour. We always like to give our guests an opportunity to share their final thoughts. So, Terry, I'm going to start with you. What are your final thoughts regarding tonight's topic? And thank you so much for joining us.
Well, thank you for having me. I would like to leave with this. Put the phones down if you can. Have that one-on-one time with your family and be able to model healthy interactions.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Miss Bernie, what are your final thoughts?
She said it all. Miss Wilson, that was literally perfect. I concur with exactly what she said. We've got to model what we want our children to see, and we're guilty of carrying this thing around with us all day and all night.
And Miss Bernie, do you ever need people to volunteer with you? And if so, how can they get involved? And more importantly, if they want to make a donation to help you with the work that you're doing?
Yes, we always are looking for volunteers. We always are looking for donations, and we would love for everyone to come out to our Let's Move Jacksonville event. You can visit on our website, www.imastarfoundation.org, or follow us on social media at I Am a Star Jacks.
Thank you. Dr. Kane, what are your final thoughts?
Well, the one thing I will say to start is not put the phone down when you can. Put the phone down. So I concur with Ms. Wilson absolutely to the nth degree. One one of the things I am concerned about, and we didn't have a chance to discuss it, and we can talk about that later. With all that's coming out of DC, and the fact that many of, and we're talking since Tyrone presented our moment, our history moment. There's a lot of stuff coming out of DC where if your kids are not in college or they've gotten in trouble, whatever that trouble may be, it may be, they stepped on the sidewalk, for as I'm concerned. But that those are those kids that they were targeted to send to the military, or if it's bad enough in their eyes, put on the chain gang. It's something that we thought that our generation would never hear again. But put on the chain gang. And so, if no other reason, with talking to our parents, even though there's plenty of other reasons, if no other reason than talking to our parents, please help protect your child from being put in that situation by addressing bullying, whether they're the ones that are doing it or it's being done to them and leading to an abnormal behavior or some behavior that undesired behavior by your child, okay, as a result of being bullied. So think about it, at least in that context, that, two lives, and when I say two, the bullier and the victim, two lives and their careers may be saved just by addressing the bullying issue with your child. Especially if they're not the victim, well, I'm not going to say especially, but also the bullier and the victim. Just remember, your child can be a bully, not necessarily the victim. So If you examine that behavior or try to see if that's in your child. I try to do it with mine all the time when they were growing up, that if I caught any abnormal behavior where you picking on another kid, you will regret it by the end of the day. Not next week, not overnight. You will regret it as soon as your black behind, and I got a bunch of ladies on here, black behind got home. I would address it, because you're not going to pick on other people if you think you're in a better situation they are, which if you're picking on someone else, you're not. You're not in a better situation. But just in case you think that, no, I don't tolerate it. I don't think these parents should tolerate it, but for sure help save our children by addressing it.
Thank you, Dr. Kane. Thank you, Ms. Burney, and thank you, Terry. As we wrap up tonight's conversation on bullying prevention, I want to speak directly to the parents, grandparents, and caregivers who are listening. Talking to your child about bullying isn't always easy, but it's one of the most important conversations you can have. Kids don't need us to have all the answers. They just need to know we're listening. Start with curiosity, not criticism. Ask how things are going at school or online. Listen more than you speak. And when they open up, don't rush to fix it. Just let them know you're proud of them for sharing. Avoid labels like bully or victim. Focus on behavior, what's hurtful, what's kind, and what we can do differently next time. And if your child has been unkind to others, remember it's a chance to teach empathy, not to shame. Keep checking in small moments like a car ride or dinner conversation can open the door for healing and honesty. Most of all, remind your child that they're loved no matter what. That kind of safety at home builds the courage they need out in the world. On behalf of our team at Pause for the Truth podcast, we thank our incredible guests for sharing their expertise and passion tonight. And to every parent and caring adult listening, thank you for doing your part to make our schools and our communities safer, kinder places for every child. I'm Jocelyn Turner, reminding you to pause, listen, and to speak truth, because that's where understanding begins. Good evening.
We appreciate you spending time with us on Pause for the Truth. Ms. Jocelyn Turner and Dr. Rogers Kane are grateful for your support. Don't forget to like us on Facebook, catch us live on Twitch, and most importantly, subscribe on YouTube. A big shout out to Tyrone Jackson at Call Tyrone IT Services for keeping us connected. Join us every Tuesday at 6:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time for more enlightening discussions. Thanks, and see you next week.